we have set this up to have professional immigration advice for you for the questions that we know you have. I will also remind you, please, to notify Sault College of your travel plans. We know there are some changes happening right now. We're going to do our best to keep everyone well informed, but please understand we are still responsible to ensure you're following the mandatory quarantine requirements. So please make sure you're sending a travel notification through the iSent app if you're intending to travel. So with that, I would like to welcome and thank, we have Elizabeth Long and Zia Sumar from Long Megoji Immigration Law Firm. They are based out of Toronto. They offer these sessions to our students, and we're very grateful to them for helping our students understand their status and the best path to follow and to flow. So I will pass this over to Elizabeth, and I will thank you both again for your time this morning or this evening for some of our students and helping them answer their questions.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Heather. It's always good to be here with you guys. So here's how it's going to work. I'm going to be presenting through a PowerPoint that you'll see on the screen shortly. And in the meantime, throughout the presentation, if you have immigration questions, please post them on the Q&A that you'll see on the bottom of your screen there. We'll go through the Q&A and the chat. We'll leave the chat out. Okay, so post your questions on the Q&A, and Zia will be throughout the presentation answering your questions on the Q&A. All right, so let's get started here. All right, so today we're going to be talking about immigration law as it pertains to international students. We're going to talk a little bit about coming into the country, but mostly we're going to concentrate on after you're in the country, how to maintain your status and how to get permanent residence as well, okay? Before we talk about permanent residence, there are a few things I wanted to speak to students. If you are currently in the country, what you need to do while you have temporary status. So first thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is implied status. Implied status is something that if you have temporary status in Canada, it's one of the most important things you need to know. Let's say I have a study permit and I'm in Canada and it expires, let's say it expires on February 28th, okay? Now, I still need to continue to study. My semester does not end until April, okay? So I will need to file an extension of my study permit. Now, the website, the government website says you should file it 30 days before. That's a recommendation. That is actually not the law. The law is that as long as you submit your extension before it expires. So let's say my study permit expires on the 28th and I submit it on the 27th. Okay, I don't recommend you do it at the last minute. 30 days is a good measure, for the most part, but you can. Okay, let's say I just submit it on February 27th. I don't probably get a decision until March 31st, let's say, okay? If I submit it before it expires, I have implied status and I can continue to study until a decision is made, okay? Now, what if I completely forgot to extend my status before then? What happens then? Well, let's just say on March 1st, I wake up in the morning and I have a nagging feeling, oh shoot, I probably forgot to do something today or yesterday. And I realize, oh shoot, my study permit has expired. Okay, what can I do then? In that case, I can make a restoration of status, okay? Usually, the restoration status is 90 days. Currently, because of COVID, the government has made a special extension of restoration period. So if you lost your status by January 30th of last year, you actually have until August 31st of this year to extend your status. Okay, but it's normally 90 days. So I can file the restoration of status. I have to pay an extra $200 fee and file it. But while I am waiting for the decision on the restoration of status, I actually don't have status. So in that case, if I had filed it on February 28th before my study permit expired, I would have been okay. I would have had implied status. I can continue to study until a decision is made. But if I forgot to do that and I file it on March 1st, just a few hours later, then I have to stop studying. Just stop studying until a decision is made. So I could lose a whole semester that way. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you go home, check your study, or you're probably at home already, right? We're all online right now. When you are, go and check your study permit and make sure you circle that expiry date on your calendar, put it in your phone 3 times, reminder, okay? And make sure you extend your status. Always try to keep yourself in status, okay? And you can only get implied status if you apply properly. So if you submit your application and you forget to attach the right fees, pay the right fees, or press that button, okay, or use the right forms, then they can say that you did not apply, and then you would not even have status, even if you had submitted it beforehand. The second thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is ensuring that you guys have work experience that is high skilled. When we talk about permanent residence, you will see that there's a very big difference between high skilled work and low skilled work. And for the most part, immigration will allow you to immigrate if you have high skilled, and there are very few programs that will allow you to immigrate if you have low skilled positions, okay? So what's high skilled and what's low skilled? The immigration department has adopted a system called the National Occupation Classification classification codes, called the NOC codes, NOC codes. And they've divided it into 5 different categories. NOC O, A, and B are high skilled, and C and D are low skilled. So what's high skilled, what's low skilled? Let's play a little game, okay? I'm gonna say an occupation, and you guess whether or not it's high skilled or low skilled, okay? Let's take an office situation. Let's say a receptionist, that's low skilled. A secretary, that's high skilled. A data entry clerk, that's low skilled. Bookkeeper, that's high skilled. Accounting clerk, that's low skilled. A medical assistant, that's high skilled. A dental assistant, that's low skilled. Okay, so you can see sometimes it's not altogether clear what is high skilled, what is low skilled. It doesn't matter, what employer you work for example. It doesn't even matter exactly what you are called. It matters on what you actually do. Okay, so the point that I'm trying to make is make sure that whatever work experience you have or you're going to have, you know whether or not it's high skilled and low skilled, and plan properly. If you take nothing away from today, but this is my advice to you, and that you need to plan for immigration. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go through a few rules that are specific to the crazy situation we are in today. Now, what I tell you today is true today, but it very well could change, tomorrow. Probably will change next month. And so what we do is we're going to put you on a newsletter where we send out some updates to immigration when we know it. Okay. And but make sure that whatever you're doing, today what we're doing is we're not providing advice. We're just providing some general overview of immigration situation. When it comes to your own situation, you can contact us to have a consultation about your own situation, during that period of time. Okay. So let's talk first about, filing your study permit. So for those of you who are still outside of Canada, okay, you may be able to be eligible for the post-grad work permit. The post-grad work permit, I'm assuming, is probably the first goal for many of you, because that will allow you to work in Canada and be on your way towards permanent residence. Okay. If you're still waiting for your study permit to be issued, you still have a chance to have that study be counted towards your postgrad work permit as long as you applied before the semester started. Okay, and this right now only applies up until this new winter 2021 semester. Next year or the next semester, they have not made the announcement yet about that. They probably could extend it and probably will. Right now, the government has not made an announcement about that. Okay, but it only counts if in the end your study permit is approved. If your study permit has not been approved, then you wouldn't be eligible for your postgrad work permit, because in order to get a postgrad work permit, you have to have an approved study permit, a valid study permit. Okay. You, first of all, to come to Canada, everybody is going to need to take a positive COVID-19 test. You're going to have to undergo a test, and hopefully you won't be positive. Hopefully it will be a negative test within 72 hours of your flight. Okay, and you will be subject to quarantine provisions upon entering Canada. Now, there was just an announcement made a few days ago about hoteling in the government hotels. When you come, you're going to have to do a test there, and there's 14-day mandatory quarantine. Please check in with your school. We're still not exactly sure about all of the provisions as it applies to international students. Please do check before you come as to what exactly it will be. Okay. So Sault College is approved as a COVID-ready DLI. So if you have a study permit approval, you can travel to Canada. Previously, earlier on last year, they weren't allowing students to come. Now they are. Okay, but it's only for COVID-ready DLIs, which Sault College is. If you're in Canada and your classes are part-time or on hold because of COVID, you can still qualify for the post-grad work permit, but make sure that you have the evidence that your classes were put on hold because of COVID. Okay, and if you're currently in Canada, you're applying for your study permit, you're exempt from the biometrics requirement. Like I said before, with regard to restoration of status, you have until August 31st now to file the restoration of status. However, when you are waiting for the restoration of status, you don't have status and you cannot study at that period of time. Okay. All right, so let's talk about studying and working on a study permit. The first thing that you have to understand is, even if you have a valid study permit, it doesn't automatically ensure that you will keep your student status until the end of the study permit. In order to keep your student permit student status, okay, you have to actively pursue studies. You have to go to class. You have to basically at least be a full-time or part-time student. okay? Otherwise, you lose your status within 90 days. There are two exceptions to the rule. Scheduled breaks, those are the breaks that the school mandates for everyone, and they're on the academic calendar, okay? And the second one is the authorized leave. Authorized leave is more an individualized thing. And you can't just give yourself authorized leave. It has to be authorized by your school. Okay. And what it is it's for people, for example, if you have a medical condition, let's say you get COVID and you can't attend class, you can ask for special permission from the school to take that semester off. You can take up to 150 days off. Okay. And then afterwards come back and, attend school. During that authorized leave, you're actually not going to lose your status. Now, if you are on authorized leave though, okay, you are not a full-time student and you cannot work part-time, full-time, anytime while you are on authorized leave. Okay. The second thing is, don't provide excuses to immigration that you can't maintain your status, okay? Your applications are still being processed. Okay, you have to submit your application properly before your status expires. Okay, now let's talk about working while you are studying. If you are a full-time student in Canada, okay, you can work off campus, and off campus is 20 hours a week, I'm sorry. On campus, there is no limit, okay? And while you are on scheduled break, it's full-time, okay? Now, this only happens if you're a full-time student. If you're a part-time student, you're not allowed to work, okay? The only time you can work if you're a part-time student is if you're in the last semester. Sometimes, IRCC recognizes that students who are in the last semester, you may be just missing one or two courses that you weren't able to take previously. So they'll allow that. And if you're a part-time student, your last semester, you can actually work full-time off campus. Once you've completed your studies, you're no longer a student, you have to stop working. That means that once you've received the first indication from the school that you've completed your program, you are no longer a full-time student. If you're no longer a full-time student, you're not allowed to work at all, full-time, part-time, anytime. And don't say, oh, I have the co-op work permit. The co-op work permit does not allow you to work in anything other than co-op. So if you've finished your studies, you cannot use that work permit to say you can work, okay? The only exception is if you are going to do a second program and you've been accepted to the second program, and that's going to start within 150 days from the stop of your first program. So this is for people, let's say you finish your first degree in April of this year. And then you're going to start another program in September of this year. If you've already been accepted to the second program, then during that summer semester, it's under 150 days, you can work full-time during that time, okay? And during COVID, if your classes are canceled because of COVID, then you can work part-time because the classes are canceled. You can't work full-time. Okay. All right. I want to go on to talk about the postgrad work permit. For most of you, this is your golden ticket towards getting permanent residence in Canada. And why is it a golden ticket? Well, it's a golden ticket because it gives you, it's an open work permit. You can work for anyone, and the employer doesn't have to do anything in order for you to work for them. It's also rather easy to get. You finish your program, and then you can apply for it, okay? You only get one golden ticket in your life, okay? People ask me, oh, my postgrad work permit is going to expire. How do I extend it? For the most part, you're not going to be able to. Now, this year, There's a special, extension for people who, because of COVID, okay, special extension allowed for people whose work permits are going to expire before November 27th of this year, okay? But normally, you're not going to be able to extend it, okay? So the first question that you should be asking yourself is not how do I apply for the postgrad work permit, it's when should I apply for the postgrad work permit, okay? Because you only get one postgrad work permit in your life, okay, you have to calculate as to how you're going to get permanent residence by getting the work experience through your postgrad work permit. Like I said, to extend the postgrad work permit for most of you, it's going to be very, very difficult to do so. Okay, so if you are attending a program that is 8 months to 2 years, you're supposed to get a work permit based on that 8 months to 2 years. If it's 2 years or more, then you're supposed to get a work permit for 3 years. Now, the 2 years is academic years. Most 2-year programs do not run 24 months in total, right? They might run 16 months with breaks and etc. Okay, so and immigration recognizes this, and for the most part, they will issue 3-year work permits for 2-year programs. But if you have a 1-year program, now some of you might be able to be fine with a 1-year work permit, you'll get your work experience. But a lot of you, especially with COVID and with employers not hiring that much, may need the 3-year program. So if you've only done a 1-year program, you can apply for another program, and you can combine the lengths of these 2 programs together to be 3 years. So 1 plus 1 does not equal 2. 1 plus 1 will equal a 3-year work permit at the end. One of the very important things that you need to understand about the postgrad work permit is the officers are very strict about students maintaining full-time status throughout the entire length of the program. Prior to COVID happening, we were getting a lot of students coming to us who said that their work permits had been rejected because they did not maintain full-time status, right? They had 1 semester sometimes where they were part-time, and the officers were rejecting their applications. Now, if your situation is that it's been rejected, you have a part-time studies because of COVID, immigration has said that they will allow you to still get a postgrad work permit at the end, but make sure you have the evidence. We have also seen some success where we explain different situations for students, and as to why they were part-time, and it is up to the officer's discretion. The officer does have some power to grant the postgrad work permit anyway, but it has to be explained carefully, and it's up to the officer as to whether or not they feel that's a good enough reason to give you a postgrad work permit at the end. For the most part, my advice to you is if you can help it, don't go part-time on your own will. Let's say you are sick, okay? If you are sick, take the authorized leave, right? And get authorized leave from the school, take off the semester, and then come back. Much, much easier, much, much safer to do that than to just go part-time, or you're having trouble to go part-time and not come, and then afterwards ask for the officer to take pity on you. Okay. Let's talk about working. Okay. When you receive the first indication that you have you have completed your program, the deadline that I'm going to tell you to keep in your mind to file your postgrad work permit is the earlier of when your study permit is still valid, or 90 days from the completion of your program when you receive that letter. If you go on the IRCC website, they'll say you have 180 days to file your postgrad work permit. Why then, you say, Elizabeth, why are you telling us to do it 90 days? The reason why I'm telling you to do it 90 days is because you have to file a work permit for your postgrad work permit while your student status is still valid. Your student status expires 90 days after you finish your studies, right? So it's 90 days, or your student status also expires if your study permit expires. So it's earlier of the study permit or 90 days. If you do that, you will get a postgrad work permit. You shouldn't have too much of an issue, pending other issues like full-time study, etc. But the timeline is okay. And if you do keep that in mind, if you file it during that period of time, you can start working while waiting for your work permit. So as soon as you file your work permit, and you might not get your work permit for 3 or 4 months, but while you're waiting for your work permit, you can start working, okay? Now, sometimes people talk to friends and their friends tell them, oh, it was so easy for me to do the postgrad. Don't go online, I just went to the border, okay? First thing you have to think about, another piece of advice, don't listen to your friends, okay? Friends often, they don't know what the law is. The law changes all the time. What might have worked for them may not work for you, okay? Right now during COVID, the borders are closed. You can't go to the border to just apply for the work permit. You will have to apply online. So it's very important that you keep these timelines in mind. All right. I'm all I'm a little bit tired about talking about the temporary status. Let's go and move on to permanent residence. The first one I wanted to talk with you guys about is express entry. Express entry, many of you would have already heard about it. It's one of the more popular programs for students and skilled workers to apply for permanent residence. Here's how it works. So in order to go through express entry, you have to create an online profile, and you can do so if you qualify under one of 3 categories: Federal Skilled Worker class, Canadian Experience class, or Federal Skilled Trades class. Once you create an online profile, you will enter the express entry pool, and you can stay in the pool for 1 year, okay? But just because you've entered into express entry pool, it does not mean that you have applied for permanent residence. You have not applied yet. You're just a candidate, okay? When you enter the pool, you will get a series of points called the CRS points. And they're going to be based on your background or if you have provincial nomination that is express entry linked. And every 2 weeks or so, the government will have a draw where they announce a number and the category that it applies to. And if your number, and you're in the right category, is above the number that they have invited, then you will receive an invitation to apply. It's only when you receive the invitation to apply can you actually submit your application. All right, so let's talk about how to get into the pool. There are 3 categories. The first category, many of you probably already qualify for, okay? It's based on, the work experience for this is very specific. It's 1 year of high skilled, not O, A, or B, okay? Full-time, at least 30 hours a week, okay? High skilled full-time, continuous, no breaks, in 1 occupation. And so basically this, it doesn't have to be in Canada. It can be anywhere outside of Canada. It could be self-employment work, okay? You have to prove it, of course, but it is something where you can, you may already have this work experience. Okay, I have people who qualify for this if they're not even in the country, they've never come to Canada before. Okay. Other than this, there are language requirements, and then we do a scoring of your background to see if you meet the minimum skilled worker scoring of 67 points. You also have to have the financial savings to support yourself and your accompanying family. So for one person, it's 13,000 Canadian. For more people, maybe add a few thousand for each additional family member. The second category is called the Canadian Experience Class. This is a very different category. For this category, you have to have 1 year of work experience in Canada when you are not a full-time student. And you have to be high skilled and you have to be employed. Okay, so for the second category, this is very different from the first one. The work experience, you have to be employed. You have to receive a T4 from your employer. Okay, that's one of the main indications that you're employed and not a contractor. And it doesn't have to be continuous. It doesn't have to be in the same occupation, okay? But it does have to be high skilled, okay? And it also, it's within 3 years of the time that we apply. You can count different part-time together as long as the hours add up to 30 times 52, which is 1,560 hours. There are also some language requirements for this. I will tell you that the language requirements to get into the pool is nothing compared to what is required to get out of the pool. Okay. The third one is for skilled trades. Now, this won't apply to most of you. It's for people who are in the trades, the construction trades, and you have to have an LMIA or provincial certification for your trades. All right, so let's say you get into the pool, okay? Now, the draw, let's say the draw was 461, but it was for Canadian Experience Class, people who were in the pool for Canadian Experience Class. So who's gonna get out? Well, you say, well, obviously Trupti is gonna get out, okay? Maybe or may not. I didn't say what Trupti is. Did Trupti get in because she qualified for Canadian Experience Class? Or maybe she just qualified under the Federal Skilled Worker Class? If she just went in and she qualified under Federal Skilled Worker Class, she would not qualify in order to get the invitation to apply. So oftentimes, especially before COVID, the invitations were for everybody in the pool 90% of the time. Now, during COVID, the government has taken to inviting a lot of people who are in the pool just because they were under the Canadian Experience Class and not inviting everybody. That's why the points sometimes you see have been lowering for people in the Canadian Experience Class. But overall, if you don't have that Canadian experience, the points have still remained pretty much steady around the high 460s, 470s or so. All right, so how do you get points? How are you scored to get out of the pool? The first thing that is very important is age. Okay, when you turn your 30th birthday, all your birthdays afterwards, for this system, it ain't going to be a happy birthday anymore, okay? In your 30s, your points would drop 5 or 6 points every birthday. 40s, it's going to be a fast slide, 10, 11 points. By the time you get to your 45th birthday, the good news is it doesn't go down anymore. The bad news is you get a big 0 for your age. This is very important because If you're in your 20s, you're applying, you got 100, 110 points compared to someone who has 0 points. There's a significant advantage to applying when you're young. Not a lot you can do about age except apply early when you can. Education is very important. If you guys already have a 3-year program degree under your belt, outside of the country, and you come into Sault College and do another program, that really 2 programs puts you over the top. Okay. Language is very important as well. If you do not have Canadian experience, in order to get the 470s sort of range, you're looking at IELTS scores of 7 in reading, writing, and speaking, and 8 in listening, at least. Okay. Canadian work experience. This is the same kind of work experience I was describing under Canadian experience class. High skilled work experience when you are not a full-time student and you're employed, okay? But except this one is in the last 10 years of application. Foreign work experience is also important. So if you have high skilled, again, high skilled work experience outside of Canada, that could also give you points. Spouse, if your spouse is super spouse, right? They have, high education or language or Canadian work experience, they could add points to your application. If not, they may take a few points away from your application. Provincial nominee programs, we're going to talk about that. It's not any provincial nominee programs that will give you 600 points. It has to be express entry linked provincial nominee programs that will give you 600 points. Previous study in Canada, so if you've done a 1 or 2 year program at Sault College, you get 15 points. 3-year programs, you'll get 30 points. Arranged employment. So a lot of people think, oh, I have a postgrad work permit and I have a job offer. That means I have arranged employment, right? No, it's only for people who have LMIAs, or if you have an employer specific work permit and you've worked in that position for a year. So if you have a postgrad work permit, that's not an employer specific work permit. So you will not get arranged employment points. If you have siblings, you get 15 points. Fluent French ability. Okay, so if you have fluent French ability, you can get a whole lot of points for that. Trade certification, those are for people who have are in the the construction trades, and you get certification by the province. All right, so some of you might think, oh, this is great. I should be fine after I graduate, or work in Canada. And you can see why it is that the postgrad work, the length of postgrad work is very important, because the work experience could be very significant to your ability to get that ITA. Okay. I wanted to talk about the Ontario's provincial nominee program, that is express entry linked. So you see, immigration is normally a federal jurisdiction, but the federal government has made an agreement with each province to allow each province to get their own nomination programs where they can select people who they also want to get permanent residence. That's called the provincial nominee programs. Ontario's provincial nominee program is called the OINP, Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program. And the OINP, they also have different kinds of programs. They have one sort of program is called express entry streams. So if you are able to get an approval under one of these express entry stream programs, you will get 600 points that you can add into your CRS score for express entry. 600 plus anything you are going to get through. Okay, so that is the benefit of going through this stream. If you do not have enough points to get an invitation to apply, if you have enough points, you don't need to go through here. If you don't, then this is something that can be attractive. So how does it work? First of all, you can't just go and apply directly to OINP. I don't know if you guys know about this dating app called Bumble. I've never been on it myself, but from what I hear, for this dating app to work, the guys cannot contact women directly. The women have to, they will view the men in the pool, and they will contact them if they are interested in them, and then the men can communicate with the women. Okay, so similarly, this is how it works. You guys are like the men, okay? You can be in the pool, and then OINP is like the women. They will look at your profile, and they will contact you if they are interested in you. They will send you what's called an expression of interest. And once they send you the expression of interest, then you can go and apply with them if you wanted to, okay? So who are they interested in, right? There are a few categories. The first one is the human capital stream. This is the one that is, people don't really know sometimes who they're interested in. They may not know or say themselves. They have said that they like people in tech. So they have what is called the tech draws. They have a list of occupations for people who have background in those tech occupations. And then, you know, every few months or so, they'll have a draw where they invite people who have experience in one of those occupations, but also their scores are pretty high. Not as high to get an invitation by themselves, but let's say for 50s, for 60s, you know, for 30, it depends on what it is, okay? But it has to be at a certain level. They have also invited other people who have job offers sometimes before, or others identified occupations. They don't announce it beforehand. They would just say, okay, we're inviting you because we like you. In order to qualify under this, you have to have a bachelor's degree. You can have the bachelor's degree anywhere in the world. You don't have to have it in Canada. The second one is skilled trades. So for those of you who are in the construction trades, if you have 1 year of work experience in Ontario in the last 2 years, then you could be one of those people that they're interested in. Before, they didn't have a base number for people who they're selecting. Now they are selecting people. You have to have a certain score for them to invite you as well. The third one are those lucky French speakers. If you can have a certain level in French and English and you have a bachelor's degree, they could also be interested in you as well. All right, let's talk about something other than express entry. Some of you might think express entry is great. Other people say, I don't know if that's going to be for me. Okay, so what else is out there? One of the programs that is very popular is the employer-based programs for OINP. So first of all, you have to have a job offer from an employer that qualifies. If the employer is outside of the GTA, they have to have a gross income of over $1 million, have 5 full-time Canadian and permanent resident employees, and be in business for 3 years. If the employer is outside of the GTA is Greater Toronto Area. So Sault Ste. Marie, outside of the GTA, okay? If your employer is outside of the GTA, the gross income is $500,000. They have to have 3 full-time Canadian or permanent resident employees and be in business for 3 years. The job offer has to be full-time and permanent. Okay, so this is the basis. Now we're going to build on top of that because there are 3 categories on top of that. The first one, one of the most popular one, is the international student class. So if you've graduated from a 2-year program or a 1-year postgraduate program. Now, just because your program is called a postgraduate program does not mean that it qualifies under this, okay? So if you do any 2-year program, you're good, or the 1-year postgrad program has to be a program that requires everyone who attends the program to have a degree. It cannot make any exceptions for those people who only have a diploma or work experience, okay? Everybody has to have a degree. Now, if you graduated from one of these programs, you could qualify under this. And notice what I didn't say. I didn't talk about age. I didn't talk about language. I didn't talk about this, okay? Your job offer has to be high skilled and it has to meet entry wage. Now, what I'm going to tell you today is true today, but it could very well change, and I'm going to have a caveat about this in a little bit, okay? The second category is for people who don't have the graduation. They're not applying within 2 years of graduation of the program before, so they don't qualify under an international student. But they have work experience, 2 years of work experience in the last 5 years in the occupation that they are applying for, okay? And the job offer has to be high skilled and it has to meet median level wage for the occupation. The third one is the one that I'm going to talk about is low skilled, okay? So these jobs, these occupations are low skilled, but it's not any low skilled occupations. There's a list of occupations on the list that are in demand. If you have 9 months of work experience in Ontario in one of these occupations and you meet median wage, then you can also go through this program. Now, the caveat that I mentioned before is the Ontario government is likely, they've announced that they want to put in an EOI system because they were having too many people apply and too little spots. So what they're going to do is they're going to layer it on top. It's going to be kind of like Express Entry, but hopefully the points system is going to be a little bit different. We are, well, especially Zia. Zia is on the committee that meets with OINP to talk about these things. So, once we know more information, we will send you, we're going to put you guys on our newsletter. You can unsubscribe if you want to, but we will be sending you guys information about programs like this when we know. All right, a lot of you have probably heard about the RNIP, the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot, because Sault Ste. Marie is one of the lucky few communities that can participate in this, okay? Now, just because you graduate from this, the program, it does not necessarily mean that you can apply. You have to have either 1 year of qualifying work experience or 2 years, graduated from a 2-year program in the community. The work experience does not have to be in the community. Work experience can be from outside, but the program has to be there, okay? The main thing is you have to have a qualifying job offer in the community. It can't just be, you just apply. You have to have the job offer, and the Sault Ste. Marie program, there's an occupations list, and they want you to score 70 points, okay? So if you have the job offer, we can see if it will qualify and to apply, okay? There's a language benchmark, but most of you, if you're going to Sault College, you should be able to meet it. And you should also have the settlement funds, around 13,000 normally, or if you're working in Canada, you're okay as well. The last program that I wanted to speak with you guys about is called the Caregiver program. What the Caregiver program is, it's for people who are going to be taking care of someone who's a child, an elderly person, or disabled person in their home. Okay, not to an institution, but in their own house, and they have to be hired by the family. And you have to have 2 years of full-time work experience doing this, and at least a 1-year post-secondary education credential, and pass the language benchmark of 5. For most of you, that should not be an issue. That's it. Okay, so a lot of you guys, especially if you're in the PSW or early childcare education, this might be a very good route for you guys, because there's certainly a lot of need right now for people to take care of people in their homes. All right, so we've talked a lot today about all sorts of things. What should you guys do next? Let me leave you with a few things. First of all, like I said, you have to have a plan, okay? Today I've talked generally about all sorts of programs, but you need to know for yourself how you are going to get to your immigration goal, right? Once you have that plan, then you can, do what you need to do. You need to study, right, for your IELTS or your CELPIP. Okay, take the practice exams. I don't care if English is your first language and your only language. Still study, because a lot of times these tests, you'd be surprised how many people whose first language is English, they go and do these exams and they don't do well on it. Okay, it's because, a lot of times these exams test not necessarily your ability in the language, but your ability to do the exam. They're not easy exams, they're very long and tedious. Okay, so make sure you practice. The programs, right? Maybe a 1-year program, which only gets you a 1-year postgrad work permit, is not enough. You have to see if it's enough and give yourself some leeway, give yourself some breathing room. Otherwise, when your program ends and you don't have a job offer, it's going to be very, very risky and also stressful for you to find that job. Third thing is, make sure you stay in status. How many, don't make the mistake of forgetting about something or saying, oh, I don't have the energy or I don't have the time or whatever. Immigration does not care about that. It's up to you. You have to stay in status. Make sure you have a plan to do so and make sure you execute. If your application is rejected, okay, contact a lawyer right away. Now, oftentimes people think, oh, we're so used to, buying something on Amazon or going somewhere, we're going to call the call center. And immigration has a call center, right? And so you call the call center. Now, the immigration, they're not really officers, they're just agents. And the advice that they give you oftentimes can be wrong. You can call them 3 times, they can give you 3 different kinds of advice. And if you follow any of the advice and you get it wrong in the end, you can't go and blame them. Mistake of the law, even if you make the mistake based on their recommendation, is not an excuse, okay? And so, if you have an application that is rejected, you call the call center and the call center says, oh, go and write a letter, right? That's usually the advice they'll say, go and write a letter. And you go and write a letter, even though you don't really know what to write. And then it's rejected. You come to me. First of all, you might have been out, you'll probably be out of time to file a federal court notice because it's 15 days from the date of rejection. Second of all, if you wanted me to file another reconsideration, I will say to you, you shouldn't have filed the first letter, because the letter that you filed is considered a reconsideration. And immigration will only do one reconsideration. If I send another thing in, they won't even read what I'm sending them because they say, this person already filed a reconsideration. And, it could be that you're out of status at that time, and you could have been out of the restoration status even. So contact a lawyer right away. Don't just trust the immigration call center, and don't trust a consultant either. There's a very big difference in immigration for consultants and lawyers. Okay, lawyers go to law school. We have a license under the Law Society of Ontario. So make sure that you go and talk to a lawyer and not just anybody. All right, so I've put our information here. I just wanted to make sure that you guys understand that we are lawyers at a law firm. And when you come and speak with us, we're happy to provide you with a plan. We're happy to provide you with consultation. When you come and speak with us, let us know that you've attended this seminar and you would like to book a consultation, and we can give you a discounted rate for the consultation. We do charge for our consultations, but we will give you a discounted rate as a student of Sault College. But you probably don't want to spend your money on us asking us about Sault College questions, which Heather and Mickey are there to tell you about your programs and how to get into your programs, etc. Don't waste your money on us for that. We don't know about that. We're just here to give you an immigration plan, advice on what to do with your life, and help you if you'd like to retain us afterwards for that. Okay? All right. So Zia, I'm sure looks like we have a lot of questions.
Yes, we've been getting some amazing questions. So I'm going to jump right in. Elizabeth, you mentioned the new travel measures that were announced last week regarding quarantine. So does this mean that that people coming into Canada need to complete the full 14 days at these government approved hotels?
So first of all, I'm going to predicate this on the government has not clarified as to whether or not this will apply to students or not, what they have announced. It seems like it will apply to students, but I think Heather has been telling me that Sault College has been trying to figure out with the government. A lot of times these policies, they were announced to, especially, these policies really announced to prevent Canadians from traveling for holidays, right? So whether or not it's going to apply to students, probably it will, but we're not sure yet. But right now, the 14 days quarantine period based on the announcement is this. When you come into the country, what they have said is that people will need to do another COVID test. So you do a COVID test before you get on the plane within 72 hours. When you come into the country at the airport, they're going to be doing another COVID test, and you're going to go and stay in the hotel. The government mandated a hotel for 3 days until your test comes back. If your test is negative, then you can go and quarantine in your own facility, in your own Airbnb, hotel, or whatever facility, school or whatever, for the rest of the 14-day period. Okay. If it is positive, then I'm guessing that you have to stay in the government hotel. Not sure exactly how much that would be.
Okay, perfect. So for someone who started their program online and outside of Canada, if they still haven't received a decision after, let's say, the first semester or even the second semester of their program, and for this example, let's say they're doing a 2-year program, what do they do?
Good question. So right now, the government has said that up until April, if you have a 2-year program, the first year you can do outside of the country. Now, you haven't received a decision yet. Hopefully you will receive the decision by the end of the semester, and hopefully it will be positive. If it is positive, you get a study permit, then you should travel to Canada based on the current rules. Now, these rules can change very, very often, probably will, be extended past this. But if it hasn't, then travel to Canada to start your second year in Canada with your study permit.
And if it's a 1-year program, Elizabeth, can we do the whole thing online?
If it's a 1-year program, as long as it's completed before April of this year, before this, then you can do the whole thing online and still be eligible for the postgrad work permit.
And what if it's 2 1-year programs? So I want to combine 2 programs together. How does that work with this online?
So you can certainly do that. So if your first one is online outside of Canada, you want to do the second one should be inside Canada, but you can do it online as well. Okay. But again, maybe they extend this provision out afterwards. We're not sure. For now, the rule that you probably should plan to is to come into Canada for your second program.
Perfect. So you mentioned also authorized leaves. How do we know what would be considered an acceptable reason for an authorized leave? So for example, if I need to take a maternity leave, is that eligible? Is that an authorized leave?
Probably, but you have to get the leave from your school. So it's not something that you decide on your own. You have to go to your school and tell them of your situation. Then they have to issue you a letter saying that you have authorized leave for that semester.
So it's a letter from the school that we would want to keep in order to be able to prove that authorized leave.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. If a student started studying online and their study permit application was denied afterwards, was refused after, what do they do? Do they have to withdraw from the course? Do they continue studying while they're reapplying? Keeping in mind that the goal would be that postgrad work permit.
So a lot of these things are kind of murky right now. If you've applied for the program and it's denied, then normally you wouldn't be eligible for the postgrad. But if you reapply again and it is approved, it is, I honestly, I don't know for certain whether or not what you studied under the first program will still be, while you were applying, waiting for the study permit for the first one, will still be accepted to be part of the postgrad work permit. You could try, but I'm not sure right now why, like these programs, right? So yeah,
but there is a lot of uncertainty still, right?
Yes, absolutely. But the thing about reapplying is don't just assume that by submitting the second application, you're going to get this an approval. One of the things, what do they say? The indications of insanity is people who expect after they do the same thing over and over again that they were going to get a different result, right? If you have a rejection, likely your second one will be rejected unless you have substantially different information that convinces an officer that they should grant you the study permit and they should go against the decision of their colleague, okay, who refused the first one. So don't just think, you're going to submit it again with the same application and you're going to get a different result. Likely that's not going to happen. If you have a rejection before, you have a very high chance of rejection again. And the only way to, lessen that is if you explain your situation very clearly and convince the officer that the decision of the first officer is wrong.
Okay. Elizabeth, so the IRCC introduced this AIP, right? The approval in principle. Once we get that approval in principle, what's the timeline to get the actual passport request or a decision on the study permit?
That's a good question that I don't have a good answer for. I think the AIPs, they were there to try to give some security to students that eventually your study permits are going to be approved, pending your medicals and police certificates and biometrics. So it sometimes depends on how long those are taking. But I do know that some of the visa posts, like New Delhi, is taking a very long time to process the work study permits, even after AIPs have been issued. You know, that I'm not sure. I wouldn't know. But the thing to do is to plan as to, you know, when your study permits are approved, likely they hopefully will be approved at that time, then you can travel to Canada then.
Perfect. But the AIP is not a guarantee that your study permit will be approved.
No, I think we've seen some cases where even after the AIP was issued, it was not approved. It was supposed to, I think their intent was to approve most, and most are approved, but there have been some cases where it has been rejection. So it's not 100% guaranteed that it will be approved.
So when I'm applying for the postgrad work permit, if I also want to be applying for my spouse's work permit extension, so their open spousal work permit extension, do I have to have just a job offer at that time, or do I already need to be working?
You need to have the show that you have the job offer, and normally what they want to see is that you have some pay stubs to show that you're working there as well. So it's not just enough to say, hey, yeah, you know, we're gonna be hiring. It has to be really serious. And normally I would suggest that you start working with them and submit the application. Sometimes if you don't have enough time to have the pay stubs to put in, you can just submit the application and then follow it up with the pay stubs afterwards.
Okay, perfect. Elizabeth, can you go over that period of time when we've finished our program and are applying for the postgrad work permit? When can I work? When can I not work if I'm here in Canada?
Okay, so when you are doing your exams, you're still a full-time student, you can work part-time. You're waiting for your results, still a full-time student, you can work part-time. When you get your results back, right? I don't care what it is, online, you get a letter, email, whatever it is. And don't make the excuse, oh, I didn't check my email, or I didn't go online. No, it's the first time it's available to you, okay? From that date is when you're no longer a full-time. You have to stop working, full-time, part-time, anytime, okay? Then when you apply for your postgrad work permit, remember my deadline of 90 days, or when your study permit is still valid. Okay, and if your study permit is going to expire before, go and apply to extend it now. Usually the immigration will let you, it should give you 90 days after your study period is over to give you some time to apply for your postgrad work permit. Go and apply to extend your study permit, because if you don't have a study permit, based on implied status, from the strict reading of the law, it doesn't seem like you're able to work while waiting for your work permit if you are only on implied status for your study permit. So it would be best to have a study permit in hand, and then you can, as soon as you've applied for your work permit, you can start working full-time at that time.
Perfect. And then if I'm doing a second program of study, can I work between my programs?
Yes, you can. So that is the exception to the rule, that if you are doing a second program, you've already been accepted to the second program and you finished the first program, as long as the second program starts within 150 days. So it should be only one semester in between the two programs. You can work in that semester in between.
Okay. And I think you kind of touched on this, but I do want to just ask it just to be sure. If my program of study, let's say, is finishing August of 2021, but my study permit itself is expiring July, the only thing I have to do in August is one exam. Do I still really need to extend my study permit, or am I okay to just be here without it?
Yes, like I said, go and extend it. You have to have a study permit until the end of your program. And it would be best if it was longer than the end of your program. Normally, they're supposed to issue it for 90 days after the end of your program so that you have time to apply for your postgrad work permit. So apply for it now, because if you don't have that study permit in hand, you shouldn't be working while waiting for your work permit.
You mentioned the CRS scores. And I don't know if there's any direction yet from IRCC on this, but if the program is completed online, do you still qualify for the CRS, the additional points for studies in Canada?
That's a good question. Yeah. Have you seen any directions? I haven't.
No, they haven't come out with it.
This question has been posed by the Canadian Bar Association to IRCC as to whether or not these regulations will be changed to give people CRS points for study online, and also for people who are not in Canada for most of the program as well, because right now it says you have to be in Canada 8 months. I have a feeling that this will change. They probably just haven't gotten around to it yet, but right now the regulations actually don't allow for that, for the education points in Canada to count unless they satisfy, the requirements.
Yeah, so I think right now that hasn't been clarified by IRCC, but certainly once we do have that, we'll post it on our immigration updates page, or COVID immigration updates page.
Yeah, and the newsletters as well.
And the newsletter as well, exactly. Elizabeth, you talked about a few different programs for permanent residents. We're getting the question a lot of, how do I know which one is best for me?
Right. So that is a very personal situation. I would recommend that you can come and contact us, and we will have a consultation with you to sit down with you. Normally it takes us around an hour for us to figure out the best plan for you and how to get there. After that, you take the plan and then you go and execute, and we'll be happy to work with you to apply. But that is not something that, I can just tell you, because it's very, very individual to yourself.
Perfect. And for the work experience, so let's say we're talking about Canadian Experience Class or Federal Skilled Worker, does any work experience count for, that's the first question. And the second is, does it need to be related to my program of study?
So it does not need to be related to your program of study, okay? It's a big misconception out there that your work experience has to be related to your program of study. It does not have to be related to your program of study. The rules are, as I've said, high skilled, whatever the program is. The only thing about relation to the program of study is sometimes when you're trying to figure out what occupation it is, the occupations will have requirements. And if they say usually required or sometimes required, that's okay. Usually required doesn't mean always required. But if they say is required, then the officer may not recognize that you have worked in a specific occupation if you do not have the education requirements. For example, if you say you're a lawyer, but you have not graduated from a law school, they will say that it is required, a law degree is required to be a lawyer. So if you say you're a lawyer, but you have not graduated from law school, they would say, you're not a lawyer. You did not work as a lawyer, okay? So that's the only thing. But other than that, finding jobs for different programs, we've talked about the different rules, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be related to your program of study.
Perfect. I'll ask one last, because I know we're kind of running short on time here. With permanent residents, you've talked about provincial, like the Ontario provincial program. There's streams that work with Express Entry, that work outside of Express Entry. What's the main difference? Like, why would we favor one over the other?
That's very personal to you, right? why do you favor one over that? Sometimes you can get through something like express entry, and that's fast. Great, let's go through it. Some people can't, and then provincial nominee programs can take a much longer period of time to go through. But for some people, it's their only way to do it. So which programs pertain to you? It depends on your goals. Each program has their own benefits and disadvantages, and we'll have to see. We'll have to weigh those for you.
And if you're doing the employer job offer route, for example, through the Ontario provincial nominee program, can you get the 600 points for that?
That is not an express entry linked. So no, you do not get 600 points for the express entry. That is a completely separate program that you apply. It's not express entry.
All right.
Thank you so much, Zia. All right, Heather and Nikki, thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you so much for joining us, both Elizabeth for all of the information and for Zia for doing a masterful job of trying to compile all of the questions into themes so we can best answer all of the students' questions. There were a large number of students on this. So we will confirm that we will be able to send out a recording of this for those who were wondering. So long as you've registered, you'll be on a list and we can ensure that is sent to you. I will please state again, if you have questions that are related to Sault College, our refund policies, how to apply for upcoming programs, our quarantine requirements, please email international@saultcollege.ca and we'll do our best to get back to you. We are still waiting on information and confirmation about the new federal travel restrictions. So unfortunately, we don't have much we can say yet, but as soon as we have details, we are going to actively send an email to everyone. So thank you again, Elizabeth and Zia, for your time this morning. We really appreciate this. And we usually have a couple of these per semester, so we will always invite students to attend again. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you to students for joining us and for your questions.
Thank you all so much for your wonderful questions. Take care, guys. Stay safe. Bye-bye.